Hello, and welcome to Get Recc'd. I am your host, Stephen Falgout.
And I am your other host, Louis Falgout. And welcome to our occasionally bi-weekly podcast where Stephen and I, two brothers, two siblings, get together every episode and recommend some piece of media to each other, be it an album, a movie, or whatever. And then in the next episode, we discuss each other's recommendations. And today it's episode 39, which is a landmark achievement because it's both a 3 and a 9. And 3, I don't know if you know this, is a 3 is a multiple of 9 or 9 is a multiple of 3. One or the other. The point is that 3 can be multiplied. In fact, no, 3 is the square root of 9, actually.
Wow.
Which is incredible.
Most people come into this podcast and like, man, if only I could get some math on it.
Exactly.
Though. And I don't know if people know this, but 3 3s, that makes a 9.
It does.
And you know what 3 3s and a 9 are? That's 39. And you know what episode it is?
Shit.
Yeah, that's right. We just unmasked the conspiracy. We parted the kimono, and now you know that we actually are the Illuminati.
Mm-hmm.
Us.
Whoa. Hey,
Just
you weren't
us.
supposed to say that part out loud.
Just us two. All that Illuminati stuff, that was all us. We went back in time. We created triangles from scratch. And there we are. That's us.
Anytime guys, I don't know if you guys have ever heard of this, but if you see a celebrity making a triangle with their hands, it means that they're requesting to join us.
Yeah. Really,
we don't accept it.
Honestly,
requests.
if you've ever seen a triangle, just in general, then you didn't know this, but you're a part of the Illuminati.
Watch
now.
out, everyone. Watch out. Be vigilant. Be vigilant. Take note.
Yeah, I don't know why we're saying this. We want you to join us, but
yeah. And there's only two
or
of us.
do
It's
we?
really lame. It'd be a lot better with like more people because our management skills are really bad. I mean, as you can see, we're part of a global conspiracy, and we've got a podcast that usually wagers like 30 views, in a week. So we could be doing a little better, but I think, we're doing okay. And all right.
I just want to mention someone in the chat said that 3 is a number. You are correct.
That is a fact.
That's math right
We've got
there.
some math geniuses in our chat here.
Holy moly. Wow. This is math. Get Jeff Foxworthy on the line because this guy or girl smarter than a 5th grader.
Wow. And also might be a redneck. And with that, I think that will neatly transition us into what you recommended to me, Stephen.
Right. Speaking of rednecks, we're going to talk about Fallout Boy today.
Famous bluegrass trio.
Yeah. It was, I believe, Fallout Boy and Larry the Cable Guy had the classic blue-collar comedy tour that we listened to before. So, Louis, I recommended to you Fallout Boy. I want to say at least their second. Most well-known or commercial album, From Under the Cork Tree, came out in 2005. Had quite a number of singles that came off of this album and probably gave them their small punk fame, I guess. Then they went on hiatus for a while and came back as I don't know what you would call them now. A Imagine Dragons.
Yeah, exactly.
That's probably what I would call them.
Imagine Dragons core, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, yeah, I mean, some of the songs on this album were kind of interesting to hear again because I feel like I haven't heard them since I was like 7. I remember there were like radio stations that used to play Sugar We're Going Down and Dance Dance. And it was funny hearing them again with like actual like listening ears because before, it's just kind of just background music. And hearing these songs that are kind of ubiquitous in a way to me because I'd heard them so much. I mean, it's also funny as well going back to this after having a decade of like what Fall Out Boy does now and having heard those songs. I guess not been a full decade, but they've been doing it this decade. And, it's weird because I don't really think... I'm sure a lot of people accuse them of being sellouts or something, which is kind of funny because, I mean, they were a pop punk band in the mid-2000s. If that's not selling out from the get-go, I don't know what is. But, like, it's definitely true that whatever sound or style or eccentricities that Fall Out Boy had back in this time have completely withered away. I feel like this Fall Out Boy is at least respectable, whereas the current Fall Out Boy is just an embarrassment. which I guess would be the major difference that I would make. But in terms of like pop sensibility or accessibility or whatever, I don't know how much has really changed. They're kind of just staying with the times and what's popular for rock bands to do now. So
but I do want to. You mentioned their eccentricities, and I do want to mention that as well because I think that's, to me, what shines the most within this album versus what they do now. Now they are absolutely commercial in a way that is just
totally soulless,
totally trend and soulless.
Yeah.
Where at least here, although they are very much pop punk, and we're still kind of following the trend of like early mid 2000s pop punk, they at least had some sort of a I want to say core message or kind of a through line through their tracks. I mean, even from the titles of their tracks, first of all, a lot of them are just straight nonsense. Like, don't really have anything to do
nonsense.
with.
It's like a sentence.
There's like it's like a
song,
it has nothing to do with the song. It's just random sentences or things like I slept with someone in Fall Out Boy and all I got was this stupid song written about
which
me.
is a reference to the band Daughters. But you didn't know that.
Yeah.
Band Daughters, a mathcore.
And so wow, it all comes back to math, doesn't it?
It all comes back. Holy shit! Yeah, Fall Out Boy, famous mathcore band.
So even, and I know I didn't.
Oh, here said it after I said it. Gotcha. Anyway, keep going. Sorry.
And I didn't ask you to do this, but even watching their music videos from this time frame, and I would say the album after this as well, you can tell that they at least had an image and a message, and that's just completely gone at this point.
Yeah. Well, no, they do have a message because their remix album of their last album was called Make America Psycho Again. So I think they're very political. They're really pushing the forefront of revolutionary politics in the U.S.
Yeah, their arena rock anthems for esports are really going.
Centuries really moved me on a level. It gave me a political revelation. But anyway, yeah. Well, I mean, look, a lot of the things you mentioned, and a lot of things you mentioned there are still conventions of the genre. The long song title thing, that is like a scene band 101 thing to do stuff like that. Now, to be fair to Fall Out Boy, though, I think that they don't just. At this time, they did sound like a band that actually liked what they were making, which is a big difference to now, where I would be shocked if any member of the band actually gives a shit. Maybe they do. Yeah. So anyway, the first thing I wanted to say about this album is that, or this is basically like my summary of this album. I feel like, maybe not even just this album, just Fall Out Boy at this time. Fall Out Boy at this time is like early Panic at the Disco, but like if they were tolerable. That's what this sounds like to me. Like, when I was listening to this album, it was actually kind of shocking to me just how much they sound like early Panic at the Disco, like pop punk Panic at the Disco, like, you know, I Write Sins Not Tragedies and all this, like that album, whatever the hell the name of it is. It's like, it's remarkable. And Brendan Urie, the Panic at the Disco guy, he was the frontman at this time. I think he's like literally the only member now. But he even shows up on this album like 2 times or something. So they were clearly like in the same oeuvre there, in the same scene. There are also a couple other members of other bands in this scene who appear on this album at certain points with little guest verses. So yeah, it's very of its time. But where Panic at the Disco to me is like eccentric to the point of just being obnoxious and intolerable, this is music that I can have on and not mind usually. At the same time, though, I don't find myself in the camp of like Fall Out Boy used to be good exactly, because I mean, I know a song from their album before this that's pretty cool, and back in this time they were like, I would say they were bordering on being an emo band. They share some similarities with like Panic and My Chemical Romance, like emo pop kind of stuff like that. I hear a decent amount of this in this album as well, and I don't know where I was going with that, but I do. And so like it's I basically just I ended up coming away from this feeling pretty unamused overall. I think that their style just isn't really that compelling to me in this time. Similar to Panic, they do a thing where like a lot of the chord hooks and verses are verbose, and not in the language being used, just like trying to force as many words into every line as possible. That sort of deal, similar to the song titles in a way, and also usually mixing the vocals a lot louder than everything else. The mixes are kind of sterile. It sounds like a lot of pop punk at this time, probably among the better end of it, but I wasn't like exactly enthralled by this compared to other stuff.
Yeah, I would agree with all of that for the most part, although I do think it's probably a little better than the credit that you give it, but I also think that there are other examples of similar work that I think is a little bit better than this from other artists that you've kind of mentioned. Not Panic, but artists like My Chemical Romance. Although I think that in general, I just really like this style that they have specifically and the sound that they have specifically in a lot of the tracks and most of the tracks here, and then also some of the more popular tracks that come off like the next album.
Yeah.
But there are some tracks, what I was going to mention is there are some tracks that I think, because they do have a lot of energy, and honestly, it's just every now and then it's just kind of like random noise, random yelling energy that I like quite a bit. And in most cases, it's like also you don't even really understand what the dude is saying, not from the standpoint of you may not necessarily understand the lyrics, but just from the standpoint of it's kind of just garbage strings of words together. But you have songs like Sugar We're Going Down where he's like a creepy dude in a basement watching as his ex bangs another guy and wanting to be in her jeans or whatever. But you also have songs that are really kind of awkwardly slow, and almost in like an ironic way. Like, for instance, the song Sophomore Slump is like strangely slow to the point where it feels almost distracting or detracting from the overall message. I feel like there are a couple tracks in here that are like that I feel like could have been removed and were probably just there to slow the pace of the album down at certain points, but I don't feel like it added anything to the broader context.
Yeah, well, I will say in the second half of this album, things get substantially worse. I actually kind of dig the first half. I not head over heels for it, but I like the opener quite a bit. The opener's pretty good. Sugar We're Going Down is okay. They have that song has a genuinely pretty great hook. Although again, the mixing choices in this album make everything feel a lot more powerless. With his vocals generally being just much louder than everything else and far too clean for their own good. I would have preferred a little bit more energy there, and I'm not really getting it. I like the song 7 Minutes in Heaven. And then the closing track might actually be my favorite track here. I think the closer is really good. But other than that, the second half of this album is where I think things get kind of bad. I don't want to say anything gets terrible, but a lot of these songs, like, I feel like all of my negative impressions of this album get amped on a lot of these songs. I noticed the production gets even cleaner on some of these tracks. Their hooks get a little bit worse. And just in general, the formula, because it's a formula that they're working with on a lot of these songs. You can see a lot of similarities track to track. Gets a lot more stale, and I think they write less compelling songs in that back end of the album. But with that being said, I feel like it ultimately balances itself out. It's just like, I don't know. When I think about, I mentioned My Chemical Romance. I mean, yeah, they're a better band, but like, the mixing emo and pop punk together, I don't think was ever a very compelling thing. And I don't think Fall Out Boy could really be called an emo band, but they definitely share elements with a band like MCR or Panic. And I never really found that compelling anyway, but I feel like, I don't know, to me, the music is it's kind of dull. For a 42-minute record, like it just kind of fails to capture my interest. And you mentioned that they do things to slow the pace down at certain points. There's definitely an approach to the pacing of this album. Some tracks even segue into other ones. I mean, I appreciate that to some extent, but I don't feel like the band completely killed it in terms of me feeling like I'm listening to a full album experience, whereas kind of a lot of songs that are doing very similar things, but in varying degrees of quality. And so I guess on the whole, the album can feel get a bit drab after a certain point. I don't know if you would agree.
Yeah, I think I pretty much at the same sensibility. Kind of the middle of this album, I think it slows down, and you really feel that formula in the middle of this album. But I think the front half of this album, and then like from a little less 16 Candles to the end, are actually really strong, and most of those were the ones that charted as well. So I mean, that it makes sense. And then once you get into those kind of like that middle of the lineup, 7 through 10ish, I want to say, where it gets kind of slow and incredibly formulaic, that's where I feel like this drops for me. And also the tracks are pretty much all the tracks are about 3 minutes plus, so you really feel it.
Yeah. I want to shout out real quick that he mentioned to me, I said something I guess I would take back. He said that mixing pop punk and emo gave us Deja on Tendu. That's an album by Brand New. I would agree, that's true. Okay, I was wrong. Okay, pop punk and emo can go well together. But when I think about the bands that mix these styles, I just don't find it to be a very compelling combo generally. Brand New did nail it on that album for sure. And actually this does remind me of early Brand New a little bit too. But Brand New were doing a sound very similar to this like 4 years before this, and had progressed into something much more mature in not much more time. So, you know, I don't know. In all fairness though, and I meant this when I said it, I do think that this era of Fall Out Boy is genuinely respectable. Like, I think that even though they do sound a lot like Panic to me, like a lot like Panic. I cannot stress how much this sounds like Panic to me. Even with that said, I can at least appreciate the sound that they were going for here. And I do think, and this is one point that I feel very positively actually across the record, like I feel like this band puts a lot of energy into their performances. It's another reason why I wish the mix were better, because I feel like I'm not really feeling that when I listen to the album. But like undoubtedly the performances in this thing are really, really tight. And there's some great bridges, and just some great instrumental work on here that does feel like it falls behind just because of how much the vocals are taking precedent over everything here, and also just the generally sterile mix. But yeah, like also the drummer on some of these tracks was pretty impressive to me. So I would wonder if on the previous album, which I assume probably was more raw, it didn't chart. I don't know if anything charted on that, but if it did, it wasn't like this album. This album is like the album from this time. I would wonder if on that album some of the rawness and the energy in their performances come out more. I'm actually kind of interested to check that album out too after listening to this, because I would be curious to hear if some of my problems with this were rectified beforehand, knowing that the band just continued to get more poppy as time went on, as far as I know. What else do I want to say that's positive? Yeah, that's it. The band's tight. I'll say that.
I just want to mention that this album had a maroon vinyl that was sold exclusively at Hot Topic.
At the time?
Yes.
Do you know when? Oh, nice.
No. January 2013.
Oh, a reissue. A reissue for the Fall Out Boy Classic. Well, certainly in their catalog, this is probably a classic, right? I mean, when are we going to get our maroon Save Rock and Roll vinyl? That's my question.
That's right.
Yeah, but
where's my gold single of Centuries?
Oh yeah, Centuries. That's a great song, man. Yeah, I don't know. And while we're on that topic too, it is jarring as hell listening to this, knowing what they do now. Like, it's actually really jarring, because it's crazy just how much they've stripped away every single aspect that made their sound good in the first place. I mean, can you even call that artistic progression? I guess I'd have to hear the albums in between this and that to really tell, but I doubt it. But I don't know if you have anything else to say about this, because I kind of don't.
Nope.
So okay, well, let's give our thoughts then. Stuff and things. Okay, cool. Here says this is a top 5 pop punk album, and I guess that will start my spiel. I don't know. Pop punk is a genre that obviously gets a lot of flack, but I do think there are a lot of bands and a lot of that emerged from the genre that did interesting things with it. And I also think the genre is not fundamentally a bad idea. But during the 2000s, it definitely hit a wall, and I don't think Fall Out Boy break that for me. That being said, this is a lot more tolerable than a lot of the other stuff that similar bands were making. like Panic at the Disco. And I mean, I can respect that they have a pretty good blend of a couple genres here, pop punk, emo pop, and that sort of thing. I can respect the blend that Fall Out Boy brings to the table here. I just think that the album is just a little drab for my tastes. But to any potential Fall Out Boy fans watching, just know that I am not against Fall Out Boy, which is I guess that's something, right? So would I recommend this? I mean, if you think you hate Fall Out Boy because of what you've heard lately, this might be worth listening to because it could change your mind. If you're a fan of pop punk, you should listen to this. And other than that, no, I wouldn't recommend it. I don't think this is that great of a record. I wouldn't put this up there with any recommended rock albums from the 2000s. But as far as mainstream rock albums go, it's probably a slightly better one. And I'm going to give it a 5.
I think in general, Fall Out Boy has been a contentious band from its inception.
Even back in these days.
Even back in these days.
People look back fondly on this now, which is funny because I remember everybody hated Fall Out Boy.
Yeah, Fall Out Boy was a MySpace staple 100%, and people hated them, and then now people hate them and look back fondly on these albums, which I think is interesting. I don't think anyone's going to look back fondly on the Centuries era of Fall Out Boy, at least I hope not, but I can definitely understand why people look back fondly at this, and I do like this quite a bit. I think that from an album standpoint, it definitely gets knocks for me. I think that there are like the opener and the ones that charted and even a couple of closing songs are very strong off this album, but the album as a whole I feel like drags. I feel like it's very formulaic, and ultimately I don't think it really holds up as a cohesive album. But with that being said, I do really enjoy the songs that I enjoy off of this album, and I do really enjoy the songs that I enjoy off of the next album as well. So this early Fall Out Boy era, I think they were doing things that for some reason resonated with me more than other similar bands of the time frame. Like I'm looking at Blink-182 specifically, so calling out Blink-182 fans. Anyway,
it was like 90s shit though.
I know, but
on it.
I know, but even as
Worse
we go
than
through,
Fall Out Boy a decade earlier.
I know they need to get on their shit.
Yeah, for sure.
Look, Lewis, we're a part of the Illuminati, so we span all time at all time.
Mm-hmm.
Time is no longer linear when you're a part of the two-person Illuminati, so anyone can be better than anyone else at any given time.
Yeah, thanks for giving away all our secrets constantly. This is going great.
It's all right. We're going to redact all this in post.
Okay.
Anyway, so with that being said, I think I give this about a 7. Like I said, I really enjoyed the pieces that I enjoyed, but as a cohesive album, I don't think it stands up any more than like a 7 or so.
Okay.
But I do recommend it. Well, do I? I recommend the good songs.
Which are some of them. The
Which are
first
some of
half,
them.
apparently.
Yeah, figure it out.
Okay. Great. Well, we're making pretty interesting on time here, a little bit early. That's great. We have even more time to talk about what I recommended to you, Stephen, which is... It's the album Fun, Fun, Fun by Cat's Millionaire. Cat's Millionaire is a pseudonym, right? Pseudonym for independent artist Debbie McCallion, who's been releasing music on Bandcamp for like, I don't know, a decade, and MySpace even before that. Other names she's gone under after Cat's Millionaire. I'm blanking. Mom and Girls Rituals, and now she's part of the duo Black Dresses, who are making some waves right now. But back in the early 2000s, she was making brony music under the name Cat's Millionaire. And this was the last album under that name, and post then, she's moved on. But I'll leave it to you.
What is this? First
of all, it's Fun, Fun by Cat's Millionaire.
And I will say, it was fun. What a fun album. I think, Lewis, anytime you recommend anything to me with My Little Pony now, like a part of me, like the back of my mind remembers the episodes that I always forget that I've even watched of this thing, and I like shiver. I have like cold sweats in the night, and I wake up. Mm-hmm. This and anything related to swans.
Filth flashbacks.
But here we go. So anyway, this is an album, I think. I listened to it a couple of times. I want to know, Lewis, how much of this is satire? Is any of this satire? What is
No.
any of this?
No. Okay. Well, the first thing I wanted to say about this that I wasn't able to say last time because of our rules of Get Recc'd, which if you guys don't know, I don't even know if we ever said this. We're not supposed to tell each other what we think of our recommendations when we give them or anything like that. It's supposed to be purely objective information, and that's it, unless we're doing a theme that would dictate otherwise. And so immediately when I recommended this to you, I think, went to Lewis is trying to make me watch more, or listen to more, whatever, My Little Pony material, which is not true at all. If I hadn't shown you anything, I would have given you this album anyway, because I have been completely infatuated with this album. And I'll explain why if it's really that confusing. Completely infatuated with this album for the last like half a year. This has been like my album of the year ever since I discovered this. And it was probably the biggest surprise I've ever had with anything in my life. I don't think there's anything I went into with the expectations I went into this with and came out with the impression I got afterward. I have been aware of the Brony fan music scene for a long time, and I would hope to God that you were not, because holy shit, there's so many bad, like, meme tier, like, EDM, bass drop, dubstep, whatever the hell you can think of, that permeates this, that I was, like, completely certain there was no chance anybody who could competently make music or who actually had any sense of artistry could have ever been involved with it. And this completely changed my mind, but I've already talked for too long, so I'll come back to you now that I got that out of the way.
Well, I do want to say, just top to bottom, and I do really believe this, whether this has anything to do with My Little Pony or not, which from listening to it, I think it does. And also I looked at the album titles and they all talk about My Little Pony episodes. This album from a musical standpoint is truly incredible. Like pretty much every track on here I enjoyed so much. And the other thing I will say is not only that, but I think that this album really highlights something that I think is very special in what fandom can be, because fandom is honestly typically so incredibly destructively toxic.
Mm-hmm.
But this utilizes IP in a way that is so, I want to say, almost transformative, and truly can be anything that, like, even just listening to this album and listening through it and understanding, like, I didn't even understand the references to what they were talking about most of the time, but I did understand the musicality, and just thinking about this in the context of like my own fandom and things that I'm a fan of. And it's like, imagine this with anything else. Like if there are artists or content creators that were able to do something like this with anything else, like I think that it opens up an entire like potential. Now, I don't think the one thing I will say though is it's like, this is a very specific case where if you were to try to do this with one of the big corporations out there, and there are a couple of them, let's say, I don't think that this would fly any muster, because you would have a legal team on you so fast that it would be honestly destructive. But those were just the two things that really stuck out to me, like more than anything, was the general musicality of this album, which I really do think a lot of the tracks on here are just honestly incredible. First of all, her vocals are just amazing. And then two, just the implications for the fan community of really anything, but specifically this in the context of My Little Pony.
Sorry, quick sip of water. Yeah.
Lewis just drowned himself in water, if anyone was curious.
I had to go fast. Whoops. Okay. Yeah. Well, anyway. So I second everything you just said. What I think is incredible about this is that I don't know if I have. Actually, let me back up. So when I talk about Brony music being terrible, I mean, this is obvious. This is actually a much more underground release. As far as that kind of thing goes, there are some like major names. Should I call them out? yeah, I'll call them out. Fuck them. There's like the Living Tombstone who now does music for anything that's popular at any given time just to like maintain relevancy. And his music at this time, or maybe a little bit before this, but was like EDM stuff and a bunch of other people. He was the most famous, one of the most famous people. She was not. I mean, for starters, if this album came out and wasn't related to My Little Pony or whatever, it would have flown under the radar anyway, right? Like, this is very quirky, eccentric indie pop music released by an independent artist. It wouldn't have gone that far anyway. But the fandom did have, I think, the capability to launch people's careers, which it did a couple people like Living Tombstone. And so I don't know. I really wish it would have. But one of the things that bothers me so much about so much of that stuff, aside from the fact that I think the music's just really bad, is that a lot of it just turns into references, right? So like, I'm going to make a song about this and make it sound really cool by putting a bass drop in it or something, or like really predictable samples from the show or something and mixing that into some kind of EDM thing. None of that happens here. It is mind-blowing to me just how creatively and intelligently she actually uses the references, because what this album is a collection of songs that all are technically about an episode from the show, and it like lists what the episode is on the Bandcamp page for each song, so you can actually see which one it's supposed to be about. But that's only on the surface level, because every single song ends up being like an allegory for the actual emotions or feelings that would lead somebody to end up becoming a brony in the first place. And in her case, when you listen to her later material, which is just nakedly emotional to a disturbing degree, and still is to this day, has been ever since she moved to Mom to now, you realize that all of the emotions she put onto the characters in this case, again, just a front, is completely tied to her actual experiences, which is so like beyond the level that I could see anybody coming up with. It's like insane how smart that is. When you use a reference in your art, you should always make sure that, exactly what you said, it's transformative. You're actually making something out of it. Like, that use has to be the only thing that you could put in that place, right? Because otherwise you're just like calling something else out and drawing up that for no other reason than to draw up that. In this case, that is exactly what we're looking at here. And you even mentioned that like it could apply to any other like fandoms as well, which it could if you switched up the emotions of the album. But like, I think that what she's saying here is very specific to, I guess you could also say like, I don't know, like furries or something, but some kind of weird niche community like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think like on the opposite spectrum of this, you have something like a Twilight fan fiction taking off as a weird pseudo porn.
Yeah.
That becomes a multi-million-dollar movie trilogy. But yeah, I mean, I think so much of that, you mentioned that emotion, so much of that emotion comes out in all of these. And what's interesting is it's like, not only is she talking inherently about the characters themselves, but you have songs like talking about the Canterlot playset, right? Which is like, now you're becoming referential to the broader spectrum of the fandom, which is not just even the show now, but thinking about emotional attachment to the actual, like, what My Little Pony truly is, which is like the, you know, the figurines and the play sets and all of that. And I think that that is just something that is like so interestingly introspective in a way that anyone could theoretically relate to in really any aspect of any fandom, as you mentioned, with like, I mean, you could think about it really from the emotion of like, what does it mean to be a fan of really anything? And there's that attachment that it comes with all that. And now, even like going a layer deeper than that, I mean, a lot of this is referential to episodes of the show, which I think is well done as well, because it she's taking a perspective of a character in a time and place, which is inherently referential, but as you mentioned, not explicitly referential to where it's like, oh, hey, super fans, listen to this, you guys know this part. No, it's like you're getting references in like in a different context or a different way of looking at the actual episodes of the perspective of the fandom, and I think that's really cool.
Yeah, and in the case of Candlelight Wedding playset, it's doubly brilliant because not only is she talking about the actual playset, it means two things at once, because in one sense it's actually reference to the episode that you watched, probably don't remember because apparently you blocked that anyway, but a reference to the episode the Candlelight Wedding, and she's putting it from the perspective of the villain who takes over the city as if it is a playset, and the Candlelight Wedding playset actually is a playset too. And then not only is it that, but as you listen to the lyrics of the song, there's two versions of that song on this album, and both of them portray a different tone. In one of them, she's like really bitter and sarcastic, as if she's like angry at the studio, which another song in here, Princess Breath, is the same thing. Like put more wings and horns on everyone. Like that's what that one's about. And then here she's like bitter at her for making everything into a toy set. And then on the next version of the song, it's like, which is the closer here as well, it's super sincere, like an actual love letter. So there's moments of like, oh, what the hell's the word I'm looking for? I'm not going to find the word. But there's moments of, I think, cleverness like that. But then like the first three tracks here strike me as like a really incredible trio of tracks because all three of them are so like powerfully sad. The emotions that this album smacks you with in the beginning set you up for this super anxious and lonely and dejected undercurrent that stays throughout most of the record, even though it becomes more lighthearted as it goes along. Yellow Horse is like one of the best songs I've ever heard ever. And here it's like this, the entire song she's just referring to all of these, like all of the ways in which she feels like she's constantly mocking herself, constantly not accepted. It's like the self-hating, anxious emotions that she displays, and then relates them to Fluttershy, who she's saying like, you show me the way, as if people like this are relating to these characters and taking them in a certain taking them to reflect on their own thoughts. And the song Other Twilight does a similar thing too, where the song is on the deeper level, like about like actually wishing you could be a pony so that you could have friends. The last lines of the song are like, friends aren't a thing that you can just wish for, make up, or be appointed to by a queen. You'll have to trust, or something like that. Like people are looking into the show, like trying to make friends out of things that don't even exist. Like, no, you have to do that for yourself. And the way she says those lines makes it sound like she's not confident she can do the same thing. And it's songs like that where it's like, wow, there's this really incredible emotion that runs throughout this album that, again, I have not heard anybody else from this scene ever attempt.
Yeah, it's something incredibly mature for, really something that's initially intended for children, which I think is also just an interesting layer of that as well. Now, I think a lot of fandoms are in some ways originally intended for children, but having kind of this more mature perspective around this brings a certain level as well. The last thing I just wanted to mention, of course, was not only the lyrics, obviously, and her vocals as well, but I mean, even sonically, this has a lot of interesting things going on track to track. And where we just talked about Fall Out Boy having some pacing issues, I feel like this album does not have pacing issues. Actually, I feel like the energy track to track flows in a way that's kind of almost like, I think of it almost like a sine wave. You have these peaks of energy going into this sad pit of despair that you feel, and you feel that along the way, not only from the lyrics but also from the actual sonics themselves, and then even from the actual length and tempo of the tracks. Like, I'm thinking specifically as you get to the very end, like blue/fight camp, I don't know how you want to call it, but that is a kind of pretty slow song, and it's an interesting song to be the second to last song of the album. Kind of gets you off on this really low point, and then you mentioned the closer as well, which is taking the different perspective on one of the repeated tracks.
Yeah, and I mean, not only is the flow amazing, but also like for an album that was almost completely produced from the ground up by one person, this is like some of the most creative pop music. It might be the most creative pop music I've ever heard. And also, given the limited resources, like it is just crazy how many like unique sounds are on this album that I don't associate with anything else but this. How colorful this sounds, how playful it sounds when it wants to sound playful, and then like on the title track here, which I know So Great and Powerful also did some of the stuff on this one, who is another person in this vein. But even on that song, like there's this like lo-fi characteristic to it. It's got this crunch. It sounds like the whole track is distorted. And all of these songs come through with like something else. Throughout this track list, you just keep getting hit with these new ideas one after the other. And that on top of her vocals, which, yes, absolutely are amazing. But like, they're also really quirky. They're really eccentric. Like, she'll design these melodies, but she won't perfectly follow them. I mean, later down the line, she would just sing completely nuts, but here it's pretty she's pretty mellow, but like again, she's not quite following that melody exactly, so there's like this quirkiness in every single layer of the music, from the instrumentals to her voice, that again is just incredibly creative.
Yeah, I'm trying to think about, like, for me, I think a good example of that is Rarity fighting a giant crab.
Oh yeah,
might be the most, like, quote unquote, well, it's not the most fun song. I think the most fun song is Fun because it has 3 funs in it, and 3, as we've already talked about, is a very important number for this episode of the podcast. But Rarity fighting a giant crab, you have this fun I don't know, call and response dynamic between the fight and then the giant crab talking, and that eccentricity there really follows through the entire length of the album. I don't know if you'd agree.
Yeah, absolutely. And also the way, that's a great song to call out, because like it sounds like a chiptune track. Like it sounds like a lot of this does actually have some like video game music influence in it. And that song in particular, like the way that it just starts falling apart on itself in the second half is just so cool. Oh God. It's like I could just every single song or just keep going. But also what's the other one I want to shout out here? Princess Luna's Glorious Grilled Cheese Sandwiches. That song, like the way that she reverbed the main melody on that track, like to sounding really cloudy and atmospheric on top of the super busy drum beats underneath, and then like the double or maybe even triple tracked vocals in that song. At least one of her vocal tracks, she's like screaming. The way that everything's mixed in this song is just insane. Like it's like such an explosion of energy, and at just the right point in the track list too, because then it leads into Blue Flight Camp, which is by far the softest song here. Is it's just like an acoustic guitar little song. And also the acoustic guitar she also uses on the first Princess Breath, which is like, that song is so rickety. Like it's the actual guitar playing on it is always like off key. It's always on the wrong note. And the whole song it's another one where it just feels like it's like collapsing in itself, which kind of perfectly goes in with the lyrics, which start out as like the sarcastic joke, but then as the song goes along, it gets like really personal and like self-conscious. And to that point, the song keeps getting more and more rickety, which again, there's just like so many of these details that come together so well in this.
Okay, so with that, Lois, I don't know if you have any other points to call out.
Not that I can't say in the summary, no.
Okay, so I think we can give our thoughts on this one. So I will start. I like that they call this nerdcore, ponycore. Yeah, no, I think that, I started at the top of this asking what this is because it kind of really shocked me. Like it kind of came out of nowhere. I didn't even know what I was listening to half of the time. But with that being said, I will say 100% without a doubt, I enjoyed it, whatever it was. I enjoyed it quite a lot, actually. I enjoyed it so much that I might even give it a 10. I think that just up top to bottom is just this incredible piece of art not only, and I would say, even if you don't enjoy what this is doing sonically or musically, I just feel like it's such a transformative experience from a fan perspective, from what a fandom can and could be, and how a piece of IP can spread and evolve into something completely different. I know that a lot of, specifically, I'll call out a lot of game companies. I know, especially like more independent companies, really highlight or push their community and their content creators to continue to evolve their piece. And I think that's something that, especially in the age that we're in now, the digital age where everything can be created so quickly and uploaded so fast, I feel like this is something that really embodies what the future could look like, because independent property, as much as especially corporations like to control it, it is this living, breathing thing that has a whole just audience around it. I mean, you look at it as a very unique and interesting perspective compared to something with like fans of artists or people, right? Those are individuals or groups of individuals that are creating something, whereas an independent an intellectual property like this that has life around it and a community that can kind of boost it up, and really it is boosted up by the community. I think that just from that alone, this thing is so incredible to me, and I definitely wasn't expecting that. I would recommend this 100% without a doubt.
Yeah, everyone in the chat's asking me how much I threatened you, or how much I paid you for this.
Yeah,
so maybe
I
should tell them.
Yeah, I will
for
note
full transparency.
For full transparency, for full context, I will note Lewis and I are in the same room, and when I mentioned that he was drowning himself, I actually meant he has me waterboarding right now. But
this is actually an audio recording I captured of Steven in his last moments before death.
So
Yeah,
there you go.
Yeah. No, I mean,
wait, Lewis, can I just say one more thing?
Yeah.
This is important. I just want to mention that this album is hands down better than Filth.
I agree. Anyway. Yeah, it's
not better than Ariana Grande, though. Sorry, everyone out there. In
true. Ariana Grande gets an 11. Yeah. Great. That's crazy. I was not expecting that at all. Yeah. Okay. Like I said, I think my introduction talking about this album is similar to what I would say in the end, but like, this captured my like year like I don't think anything ever has, and things have, but not to this level. Like not on this, not something that I didn't expect to do that in the first place. Like 7 years on, and I was completely convinced that nobody in the Brony fandom, I guess, was capable of making competent or impressive music on any level. And not only is this competent, but this is crazy creative on the level of like plenty of my favorite albums. And it is insane to me that this still has yet to catch on that level. But like, I know Cat's Millionaire was doing stuff with other artists covering Living Tombstone before this. This was the second album. The other one reads a lot more like a more conventional Brony music album. I mean, still not at all. She's still super quirky and out there, but like she covers songs from the show and covers other people's fan songs, and only a couple songs even come close to the level of like brilliance that these do, and the level of cleverness and also just originality. I also can't think of anything else, even outside of this, I can't think of anything else in music, at least, that hinders exclusively around something else, is like this referential, and manages to make that its actual point. Like it actually does a reference right for the entire album. You could not replace these My Little Pony references with any other reference and get the same meaning out of this, which is crazy. The lyrics are stunning. The music is wonderfully creative. And just in general, like, this has become one of my all-time favorite albums, completely out of the left field. And also Debbie McCallion in general, her music even after this is just amazing. She's made so much great stuff. And now Black Dresses are doing great too. So yes, would I recommend this? Yes, absolutely. I'm still stunned by this. I would definitely give this a 10. I mean, it took me a while, I think, to realize just how much I loved this, because there really is that much to read into here. Not only is it musically great from the get-go, but like as I kept listening to this, I kept taking more and more things out of it, and I realize now just how thoughtful this actually is. And again, I would encourage anybody who does listen to this to also listen to something like Mom 3, which is a later album of hers, or something like that gives you an understanding of her actual everyday emotions. And then when you return to this, you will feel that click. You will totally understand that this was completely real. And that is just amazing to me. What are they saying?
So with that, Lewis, I think we can go ahead and move on to what we recommend to each other. Maybe we'll take a quick break we'll start a new segment. I kind of want to start a new segment today, Lewis. After we recommend, we'll take a quick break for the chat. Chat, if you want to post a couple questions, we'll answer them, and then we'll respond to some of the things you've said. But until then, Lewis, I guess I'll start. You know, Lewis, when I was thinking about what I wanted to recommend to you today, I was thinking I'm missing something. Something's missing. And I think for the last couple of years, what's happened is we've had these big blockbuster superhero movies twice a year, right? And this year we only had one. And so I was like, you know what? I want to watch a big blockbuster superhero movie, and I want to talk about it with Lewis. So Lewis, today I'm going to recommend to you Spider-Man 3 with Tobey Maguire.
Okay. Steven, for my recommendation, I also feel that something's been missing lately, and that is I have not been recommending any progressive metal to you, any prog metal. It's been sorely missing on our show. I know all of the prog metal fans in our audience are really clamoring for that. So I will recommend to you the album Images and Words by Dream Theater. Did get the thing. There we go. Okay, now I guess it's chat time, I guess.
Yeah, so we're going to take a quick break for the chat. So, Lewis, if you want to scroll up, I want to mention, go down a little bit, Lewis. We're looking at the chat. I noticed at one point, Wannabe Melon asked if, now that I'm gone, again, this is just a pre-recorded message that I've recorded. It's very convenient that it happened that you were saying exactly what I thought you would say. But with me gone, they're asking if they could co-host the podcast. And I just want to say, for the record, one, you have to join the Illuminati. Very important. And then two, you have to legally change your last name, because this can only be hosted by two brothers. So get on that, and then we can make that happen.
Unless your last name already is Falgout, in which case.
That would be very convenient. Yeah. I'm also seeing people are saying that they prefer Beetle Bronies, Lewis. Can you comment on that?
Just wait until the Beetle Bronies comeback. Well, we almost got the Beetle Bronies comeback. I'm sad that didn't go anywhere. Well,
we can affect that change. We are a part of the Illuminati, so we will make it happen for you.
Well, if you want to talk about incredible referential art, I gotta say that parodying Beatles songs with My Little Pony lyrics interspersed every 3 lines is some of the most mind-blowing art I've ever heard, and really speaks to both what the Beatles were discussing as well as the eclectic Beetle Bronies. So yeah, there you go.
So does chat have any questions for us? Unless you want to scroll down the chat.
I've got a what the fuck and a fuck you. So sorry.
Oh, thank you, chat. Thank you.
Let's see.
We will not comment on any potential suggestions because they may come up later. We don't want to give away our thoughts. I am a Megamind. Thank you. I'm a 3000 Galaxy Brain user. So thank you in the chat.
Lewis, I want to co-host a podcast with you so we can talk about how good La Dispute is. Okay. Lewis, can you talk about how Tool is the best band of... I can talk about how Tool is the best band of all time. If we're going to be doing a progressive metal show, I can't see what else I would need to say. Tool uses math in their music, which we were discussing earlier. Sadly, Steven and I weren't quite in it enough to record our episode with syllables in the order of the Fibonacci sequence, but Tool was able to do that on their incredible mathematical progressive metal song Lateralis. So if they can outmath us, and we're math geniuses, then I got to give shout outs to Big Brain Tool for their big brain math music.
Yeah, and I see also then in chat someone's asking us to talk about our favorite adult humor from Cars, Cars 2, and Cars 3, and I just want to point out that's 3 things.
Holy shit. Guys, this is crazy.
Literally anything from Larry the Cable Guy is my favorite adult humor from Cars, Cars 2, and Cars 3.
Teeterman can ask, Steven, what was that first impression that you gave for Fun, Fun, Fun? I'm so confused right now.
I think literally the first thing I said is, what is this? And I'm still not quite sure what it is, but I did like it.
That's just proof you have to listen to it 3 more times. 3, right?
Yeah, 3,
Yeah,
exactly 3.
Or maybe 9. Anything that's a multiple of 3, it doesn't matter what. Or, yeah.
I'll get my triangles ready to watch. Okay, so I think with that, Lewis, is there any housekeeping stuff that we need to mention?
I don't
Thank you,
think
chat, by the way.
so.
Thank you.
Yeah, appreciate it. You helped us fill time. No, I mean, Castbox is linked in the Castbox is linked in the description here. If you don't already know, we are in Castbox. You can listen to us in the car, on the airplane, while you're having a walk, at home, in space. I don't know, wherever. You can listen, but not like actually out in space with no atmosphere.
Yeah.
Because there's no sounds. You'd have to be on a space station. So if you're on the International Space Station and you want to listen to Get Recc'd, I would recommend it.
Yeah, and again, because we are in the Illuminati, you do have to listen to us. And if you want to listen to us while you're walking on an airplane, that's also feasible.
Yeah. Or in the airplane over the sea. If you are in the airplane over the sea, you can listen to us. But anyway, Castbox is an app, too. It's good to have on your phone. We're not sponsored by Castbox. Maybe we will be someday. I don't know. Maybe if they join the Illuminati with us.
Yeah, again, I do just want to mention as a housekeeping item, we are still accepting literally any sponsorship. We will do whatever.
Oh my God, we will whore ourselves out to an extent you've never seen before.
we will chill so hard to our usual 30 viewers. Oh my God, they are going to subscribe to whatever it is you want them to.
Yeah. I think that's it though, right? I mean, unless you have anything else you want to say.
No, that's it. So with that, those were our thoughts. Those were our recommendations. Get Recc'd.